think we're live. Yeah, it's looking like we're live now. So, uh, hi folks, Chris in Arena Recording Studio. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to have a little chat because I get asked this question a lot, really, over the years of what my opinion is, which probably counts for nothing, but being as I get asked, I'm going to talk to you about it a little bit. What my opinion is on today's music, and do I think that music from the olden days was a bit better? Well, what I take into account is because I kind of grew up in the early 70s as a kid, and then I witnessed a lot of the. I remember the Beatles when I was a tiny kid, when I was a little boy. I remember the Beatles being in the charts and being all over the TV in the UK, and it was incredible to watch all these bands that came and changed. You know, they were the forerunners of everything really, and they changed the future of music for probably to this current day. And bands like the Beatles and the Who and all these great bands, you know, that were around at the time, they just literally wrote great songs, great musicians. The recording techniques were simple. Then, you know, there wasn't 10, 15 mics around a drum kit. It was all just done simply, ended up on 8 tracks and recorded on 8, 16 tracks, you know, as the technology improved, and it created some great sounds and great music. Now, for me, what I think had a big influence on music in the olden days is the fact that a person's social standing in the UK, especially, you know, times were hard in the UK in the 60s and the 70s for a lot of people. I remember later on in the 70s, the winter of discontent, where people were kind of kicking back, striking, and all this kind of stuff, you know, and it creates underground movements when people in society are probably how do I explain this? Looking for something to fulfill themselves. You know, life's a struggle. They're looking for something, and an outlook tends to be things like music. So I was very fortunate to grow up through the era of kind of the end of the Beatles, and then the 70s in the UK. You had bands like the Sweet and all these kind of glam rock bands that burst onto the scene that were hugely popular. You know, it was a certain type of music. It was big drums, big guitars, big hair, makeup, you know, high heels, all this kind of stuff. It was a stage performance, you know, so that came in. Then kind of after all that, I sort of drifted into things like, one of the most defining moments for me, I was in a youth club and I was probably about 14, 15, something like that, and I heard a riff, and that riff was one of the best moments of my life. It was Highway to Hell, AC/DC. Now I think that was about 79. Now when you listen to that album, which was recorded in 1979 I think, or released in 79, the production on it still sounds so fresh. And this music that this band was creating with Bon Scott had a lot of energy and power and passion about it, and it was a kickback really. And a lot of the rock bands that emerged from the new wave of British heavy metal, again, it was a style, it was a status. You know, before that we had the punks. The punk scene again in the UK was a huge thing, which was a statement from the younger generation. It all depends on your culture, like, you know, underground movements in cities and places like that created, you know, like you got the Mersey sound of the Beatles and all this kind of stuff. You get the Manchester sound in the 90s. Certain areas, depending on the social situations of families and the teenagers growing up, create a new genre or style of music, which was a fantastic experience to go through. Now for me, again, I saw the glam rock, I saw the punk rock. When the Sex Pistols came out, it was just, whoa, these guys are amazing. And I just loved it because they just kicked back against the system and society and everything out there, and they said, we're going to do it our way, or we're going to do it our way, really. And then when I look back and listen to some of the Sex Pistols stuff now, it's still got that angst and that energy and that rawness. Again, it was a scene created by the social situations that people were living in. We then morphed into the new wave of British heavy metal, which kind of became the scene that I latched onto as a kid, you know, as probably in my teens then. Great British bands like Diamond Head, and, you know, and the bands that had been around for a long time like Black Sabbath, Deep Purple. These bands just exploded even bigger, you know, and there was just this new wave of young bands coming through. Iron Maiden, you know, some great legendary artists that I've spoken about so far. They came on the back of this. You know, the guys were wearing leather jackets and riding motorcycles, and there were all the rockers, and then you had the mods who were into bands like Secret Affair and all this kind of stuff. So again, you kind of sat in one camp. You were either a mod or a rocker, and then they'd go and have these meets and a bit of a punch up and listen to their styles of music, and not one was better than the other. It was just what you believed in, your purpose at that time as being a young teenager in the UK. You kind of put your thoughts and passions and energy into one genre of music or another. Then we kind of moved into the 80s where the synth stuff came in, and the 90s where you got like the Brit stuff kicking in again with Blur and Oasis and bands like that. We kind of reached the 2000s and all the techie stuff, all the synth pop we'd gone through, the New Romantics again. New Romantics, what a great era for music. You know, Boy George, Culture Club, all these, Duran Duran, some brilliant bands and artists that came out during that period as well. So again, it becomes more like a lifestyle. I think when you look back at these bands, and I was very fortunate to go through all these eras, because now I would say from probably 2005 onwards, there's not really been a great change that has decided that, social standing in life for a person or a group of teenagers have come up with something unique. It's not happened for a number of years now. I don't know whether that's just because society has moved on and maybe some people don't seem to struggle as much as they did years ago. But I do feel as though music has become a little bit like this. And it's become a throwaway item, whereas you release a song now and 6 months later it gets played all over the radio. 6 months later it's gone, it's thrown away, and it doesn't get those repeat yearly annual performances on the media systems that are out there nowadays, which is a shame, because there are some great tracks, there are some great artists. You've only just got to check them out, but artists nowadays aren't influenced really. It's like when you look at guys like Eminem and the great rappers, they came from poor upbringings and kind of the underground scenes, the rap scene in America, the hip hop scenes, all this absolutely incredible, but we don't seem to have moved anything beyond anything like that really. I still this day speak and work with a lot of rap artists who come in, and they're still doing the same thing that was out 20 years ago, that kind of style. We need somebody to put a breath of fresh air into the music industry again. When we look back how it's all come around, it's kind of heading in a full circle really, when you've got bands like the Beatles with the latest single, Now and Then Is It Called, which has just exploded in the charts. The Rolling Stones, again, all the old guys are making great music again. So maybe there was a reason for this. Is it live bands? Is it live instruments that create these genres when people are playing with riffs in bedrooms and things like that? And maybe the synthesizer or modern production, with loops and kinds of things has trashed that creativity possibly. I don't know, but I do feel personally that it was a privilege growing up in the eras that I did, because I've seen so many changes. And when I speak to the younger generation and we chat about these things, they actually are really quite astounded when I talk about some of the bands that were out there, and when they see them. I've got kids that come in the studio that are huge Beatle fans and model themselves on the Beatles. They're dressing in 70s flares and all this kind of stuff, and it's brilliant to see. So they're actually exploring the older music now, which I suppose in my day we didn't have that back catalogue. Probably not much before the 50s and the 60s to have a go at really. So it's kind of a strange position that we were put in as kids, and this is probably why we created this. We had nothing to do. Kids of my age, when I was growing up, we literally used to just stand on a street corner and have a little cheeky cigarette, and that was it, and maybe go to a youth club if there was one nearby. If we were lucky, we'd maybe go to a cinema once a fortnight, something like that. So we were looking for something to do all the time. It doesn't seem to be the case anymore. The younger generation has so much to do, so much offered to them, and they've still got so much to offer. But I just feel that the music industry now needs a bit of a kick. It needs a bit of a rocket to somebody needs to bring out something that's different, that the younger generation of today can latch onto and call their own, instead of really just, I'm going to be a rapper. Well, great, good for you, and I hope you are, and all this kind of stuff, but it's been around for 20, 30 years really now. But it's a style that hasn't really changed and morphed that much, in my opinion. I'm not that clued up on things like rap, so just the artists that I deal with really in the studio on a regular basis. But for me, we should be trying to encourage the youth to progress and develop and create their own styles of music. And I do see that a lot of bands now, especially where I'm living in Nantwich, and the studio's based in Crewe in Cheshire, there's a lot of bands starting to form that are playing a lot of great covers, and obviously the covers have kind of diversed over the years. You know, some of the bands that I've seen, they're playing stuff from the Beatles, the Who, the Stones, Black Sabbath, Foo Fighters, all this kind of stuff, but they're all rockier based bands. So you tend to see a 4 or 5 piece band in a pub or a club that just seems to be playing the classics, the standards really, because again, for the reason that there are no new standards coming forward. There's some great produced albums out there, you know, and one of the favourite acts that I like at the moment is The Weeknd. I think he's an amazing producer with the electronic stuff and creates some amazing stuff. So music has grown and will continue to grow and develop. My point of this video really is just me having a little rant, I suppose, about we need something for the kids to latch onto, for them to call their own, and that's only going to come from the kids if they can produce or play and get into the environments where they can make their own music. So it's just a little pause for thought there about how it's all gone, and I must admit that looking back over the years, you know, I've been doing this for 40 odd years now, and I might get good at it one day, I'm hoping anyway. But it's their time for them to shine. They need to get the teeth into something and come out with something, whether it's a different style of beat or a different style of instrumentation or arrangement or anything that's going to change things. They can call it their own and develop it, and boom, the whole music industry will explode to life again, and it'd be great to see. So on that note, I'm going to make myself a nice little cup of tea and leave that for where it is. And it'd be great if anybody wants to ask me any questions, then you're more than welcome. And if I can answer them, I'll do my very best to answer them for you. If I can't, then I'll shut up, really. But yeah, you know, golden eras of music. I think every generation says that their era was the best as well. As will probably people that are going to be born now in 20 years will be saying, oh, it was great in our day, you know. So maybe it's just an old man's old perspective of it. Hopefully it's not, and hopefully I've still got a valid interest in the music industry and how it all goes. So from me, on that note, I'm going to say see you again soon, and as always, stay safe, stay well, and keep on rocking in the free world.